Mesdames et messieurs, nous allons maintenant voir la deuxième partie du cours sur le règlement des différends. Et dans ce contexte, nous sommes très privilégiés d'avoir une invitée de marque avec nous aujourd'hui. Madame Ximena Fuentes est vice-ministre des Affaires étrangères du Chili. Et nous avons beaucoup de chance parce qu'elle est aussi une universitaire, une professeure reconnue en droit international, et elle arrive à enseigner en même temps qu'exercer ses fonctions de vice-ministre des Affaires étrangères. Madame Fuentes est une grande spécialiste de la gestion des cours d'eau internationaux. Elle a écrit un ouvrage de référence publié chez Oxford University Press, et il est intitulé « Les critères », j'ai la traduction française, « Les critères d'utilisation équitable des cours d'eau internationaux en droit international général ». Alors, combinant sa fonction de professeur avec des activités pratiques, Madame Fuentes Torero a été impliquée dans des contentieux internationaux qui ont impliqué le Chili, à la fois une affaire portée par le Pérou contre le Chili devant la Cour internationale de justice, puis une affaire portée par la Bolivie contre le Chili devant la Cour internationale de justice, et puis en dernier lieu, eh bien, c'est le Chili qui a porté une affaire devant la Cour internationale de justice contre la Bolivie, et c'est une affaire ayant trait à un cours d'eau international, le fleuve Silala. Alors, je voudrais vous dire que Mme Fuentes Torero a été l'agent du gouvernement du Chili pour cette affaire, et que j'ai eu le grand plaisir de travailler sous son autorité, et que ça a été une très belle expérience pour moi et pour les autres juristes et scientifiques qui ont travaillé dans cette équipe. Auparavant, avant d'être impliquée dans ces contentieux judiciaires et d'être vice-ministre des Affaires étrangères, Madame la professeure Fuentes Torero a travaillé comme directrice nationale des frontières et des limites du Chili. Et vous vous rappelez que les frontières et l'eau, eh bien, il y a une relation de très grande proximité. Donc je vous donne la parole. Madame Fuentes Torero s'exprimera en anglais, mais vous pourrez poser vos questions en français, et j'espère que nous aurons un débat riche sur son expérience. Je vous remercie.
Merci. Merci, Laurence. Bonjour. Je ne parlais pas français, je suis désolée, mais le titre de la conférence est « La protection et la gestion de l'eau au cœur des relations extérieures d'un État ». And now I change to English. First of all, I would like to thank Laurence Boisson de Chazournes for the invitation to give this lecture today that is connected to the previous lecture about how to handle disputes about international water resources. And I combine these two responsibilities. Now I am the Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Chile, but I am also a professor at the university. So that means that I can have this perspective from the academia and combine it with a more practical perspective as someone that has worked in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And before becoming the Vice Minister, I was the head of the Department of Boundaries at the Ministry. So I had to deal with our relations with our neighbors. And our neighbors are three states: Argentina, Peru, and Bolivia. And it is not only boundaries, but it is also shared water resources, because we have shared lakes and we have some rivers that traverse from one territory to the other. So what should be I would say, the main goal that drives our foreign policy in this relationship with our neighboring countries. And of course, there is the responsibility to protect the interests of your own state, but also we have to take into account that at the end of the day, we have to preserve water resources, that there are communities that depend on these water resources on either side of the boundary. And today, well, the United Nations have provided us with certain goals that look at the sustainable development of, which means that we have to have a sustainable use of our resources. So here, with regard to water, Sustainable Development Goal number 6 says that states shall ensure availability and sustainable management of water and sanitation for all. So that has, of course, an application within the borders of a state. But in terms of our international relations, Target 6.5 states that by 2030, states should implement integrated water resources management at all levels, including through transboundary cooperation as appropriate. And Professor Boisson de Chazournes already has explained that in many parts of the world, states are making an effort to have this integrated water resources management. In big countries such as India and Pakistan, in South America, also big countries, Brazil and its neighbors, in Europe, in North America. So this is a great challenge for states today, how to implement this integrated water resources management. And Target 6.6 states that by 2020, states should protect and restore water-related ecosystems, including mountains, forests, wetlands, rivers, aquifers, and lakes. So what I will show you today is, well, the many challenges that states in South America are facing today with regard to the management of water resources. So this is South America. As you see, Chile is falling into the sea, so it is very long and very thin. So to the east, we have the Cordillera de los Andes, the Andes Mountains. Huge mountain that divides and separates Chile from Argentina. On the north, we share a boundary with Peru and with Bolivia. So, and to the west, we have the Pacific Ocean. Now, with all these states, with the 3 states, we shared international water resources. Chile, Argentina, well, we have a boundary of more than 5,000 kilometers along the Andes Mountains. So, in principle, the Andes, the mountains, should work as the water parting line between the rivers that go into the Atlantic and the rivers that go into the Pacific. However, in some areas, particularly in the south, the Andes is not so high as in the north. In the south, the Andes is older. Therefore, in the south, there is a tendency to have valleys that allow the water to cross some waters that are to the east of the Andes, or a little bit to the east, to go into the Pacific. Therefore, there we have the boundary, but some rivers that will cross, or some lakes that have been divided by the boundary. For that reason, Chile and Argentina, in 1991, they agreed on a protocol on shared water resources. So that's a good thing. As you see, not all countries have treaties that will allow them to cooperate with regard to water resources. So Chile and Argentina, in this area, they were very prompt to have a protocol on shared water resources. And the purpose of this treaty is to foster cooperation between the two countries with regard to the utilization of their transboundary rivers and lakes. So here, for example, we have a transboundary lake in the south of the South American continent. This is a beautiful and huge lake called, in Chile, it is called Lago General Carrera. And in Argentina, the name is Lago Buenos Aires. And here you have a picture. So it's beautiful. So it is a little bit like Switzerland, you see. When I came by train from Geneva to Paris, and well, in Switzerland you have mountains like that, in France also. So that is the Andes. You see, it's a beautiful mountain, and this lake is shared by Chile and Argentina. So you would say, okay, it's good that you have a treaty, therefore there shouldn't be complaints between the two parties. But some years ago, we read in the newspapers that Argentina, on the east, they are planning to build an aqueduct. Because, you see here, you see a lot of vegetation. That is the effect of the Pacific. So there is rain in that area, and the clouds come from the Pacific, and they cannot cross to Argentina because the mountains are high. So we have rain. You cross to Argentina, and you have the Pampa. So it's dry, grass for the animals. That's why Argentina has, you know, beef and parrillada and all that, because you have their cattle. But not this vegetation. Therefore, they are in need of water. So there is this project to build an aqueduct to take water from Lago Buenos Aires, 400 kilometers to I don't know where. So you say, well, what will happen with our beautiful Lago General Carrera? It will go down. How much water are they going to take away? So there you see the need to have a good communication between the two states. So we send notes to Argentina. Please, could you tell us if it is true that you are going to build an aqueduct? And could you tell us if this project comes to be a reality? Do you have a transboundary impact assessment? Because you see, we are very worried that our Lago General Carrera will suffer detrimental effects by your project. And you would say, well, all this should be solved by the 1991 protocol. Unfortunately, the 1991 protocol, it's a little bit too old. Because as Professor Laurence explained, there are some rules regarding water courses. Those rules have been codified in a UN treaty, the 1997 UN Treaty on the Uses of International Water Courses. And there you have principles such as fair, equitable and reasonable utilization. You have the rule that you cannot cause harm on the other state. You have rules that you have to exchange information, that you have to conduct a transboundary impact assessment, that you have to notify, and all that. But it's from 1997. So I think that unfortunately, the 1991 protocol was not aware of the development of all these new rules of customary law. So, for example, that protocol, it does not mention the principle of equitable and reasonable utilization. So only exchange of information. And also something else. The protocol states that the two countries should work together to establish general plans of utilization regarding each of their shared water resources. So, general plans of utilization. I will come back to that afterward, but that is the only thing that it says, that for each of these lakes and rivers, there should be sort of a new agreement between each of the countries about how they are going to use it. Okay. Then let's go to the next boundary that we shared, Bolivia in the north. Well, here the landscape is completely different. Here we have a desert. And the driest desert in the world, which is the Atacama Desert. Bolivia and Chile shared a boundary of more than 800 kilometers, and they share more than, or at least 16 transboundary rivers. But also, and I think that here we don't know how many, here in the desert you have underground water, so you have aquifers. So probably there are a number of aquifers which are transboundary in this area. There we have had two important disputes about rivers, international rivers, the Lauca River and the Silala River. So here you have a beautiful picture of the Lauca. So as you see, this is the desert, but still we have the mountains. So still we have snow and some water. So here, during some months of the year, there is rain, but only for a short period. That rain infiltrates, and we have aquifers. And that rain also falls in the form of snow on the top of the volcanoes. That is a volcano. And then this water infiltrates, go into the aquifer, and because of the change of pressure, it goes back to the surface in the form of springs. And those springs create these rivers. So anyway, there is not the same vegetation as in the south, but anyway, it's a beautiful landscape. And I will come back with what was the dispute about the Lauca. And with Peru, well, we have a shorter boundary of 170 kilometers. And again, we shared some rivers, some salt lakes. This is interesting. What we call in Spanish is salares, which again, they are created by the underground water that is below, and it has a lot of salt because of the terrain. So flamingos used to live in the salt lakes, in the salares, and we have aquifers. So here, for example, you have a salar called Laguna Blanca. So you see, it's very white because there is a lot of salt here. Today, this is important for humanity, in fact, because in some of these salt lakes, we have lithium. So that's why today they are important for the eyes of Europe and the rest of the world, and saying, you have lithium. So we could exploit this in order to build our batteries. Problem is, how do you exploit lithium? You take this salt and you evaporate the water and you take the lithium. Well, that will have a terrible environmental impact. So it is necessary here to develop some form of making a sustainable use of these resources. So we need new technology, because I think that just evaporating the water is not the way to exploit these valuable resources. And also, I want to show you the kind of problems that we could have here in the boundary. So the red line is the boundary between Chile and Peru. And look at this. There is a gold mine that is 5 centimeters from the boundary, or on top of the boundary. So you say, wow, this is could be dangerous, because here we have a mine. Let me see, this is the pointer. Here we have a mine. It's a gold mine. So how much water is this mining project using? It needs water. So where is the water coming from? Well, probably from the aquifers. So they are exploiting here the aquifers. So you would say, what will be the effects here? Apart from the fact that you have all the debris from the mine, probably in these hills. So what if we have a rain and all this goes into Chile? Or do we have any water? For example, here you could see a ravine, so probably there is a small river there. So is this river being polluted? So you will say, well, this is a case where you would expect Peru or Peruvian authorities to have conducted a transboundary impact assessment. And also to have more knowledge about the behavior of the underlying aquifer. Well, so after showing you these pictures, you could imagine that states are facing great challenges in order to protect and to make a sustainable use of their shared water resources. So what are the challenges that states face when exploiting these resources? Well, first, they have to comply with their international obligations. And even if there might not be a treaty in place, we have some rules that we could say are rules of customary international law. That means that the practice of states have created these rules. And we have two important rules. One is the equitable and reasonable utilization of international water resources, and the obligation not to cause significant harm. Those are the substantive rules, but we also have certain procedural rules. First, and very important, the duty to exchange information. I mean, states are allowed to know what is happening on the other side of the border that might have an effect on your own territory. This is part of, I would say, a good neighborliness duty. Being a bon voisin is the name in French. Next, the duty to undertake an impact assessment. The same as happens within our countries. You have a factory, you have a mine. Well, the environmental authorities or the government would say, you have to show me that you have studied the situation, and you have to tell me what are the possible impacts on the community, on the vegetation, on the rivers, etc. So in international relations also, we expect that states will conduct a transboundary impact assessment in case that there is a risk of significant harm to the other riparian. So, and that you have taken measures to diminish those impacts or to take certain measures that will reduce the level of impact. And also, you have a duty to notify planned measures in these shared water resources. Okay, let's see some real problems now. Here. Let's go to Peru and Chile. So I will show you where the boundary is. So the boundary is the red line. This is the Pacific Ocean. Okay, and here you can see, this is the desert anyway, but here you can see all those red dots are wells. So all those red dots are taking underground water. For what? Well, because here in Peru, there is a big city called Tacna. It has, I don't know, probably today 300,000 population. And most of the population there lived on agriculture. So, but there are not many rivers here. As you see, this is a desert. But there are plenty of underground water. So we have these wells. So here, what is happening here? If you look at the image, you would immediately say, well, but what will be the effect of all those wells, and what will be the relation with the seawater? So we have the boreholes, we have the sea, and we have underground water. Well, we were a little bit worried because we also were sort of looking at the satellite images of what is happening. So we approached the water authority from Peru, and we said, you know, we are a little bit worried because we have thousands of boreholes. So it will be good to know how this aquifer is behaving, because for sure this is an aquifer that is transboundary. So we would like to know what are the effects of the boreholes on the water resources in Chile. We don't have the same agricultural activities in our part of the country, so we were not worried about any agricultures being affected, or at least only a few. But we wanted to know if this could affect our rivers on the side of, or our side of the boundary. Well, we have made some studies by ourselves, but we found something very interesting, which was a PhD thesis by a Mexican scientist. And he published an article. We said, oh, we have to read that article. So he went to Peru, and he made a lot of investigations. And he found that, so the conclusions are that what we already thought was happening, the seawater is coming into the aquifer. Because with so much overexploitation, there is a process called the salination or seawater intrusion into the aquifer. That has already happened, I'm afraid, because the article that we found on the press is telling that. Therefore, that means that the aquifer will no longer provide fresh water because it will be polluted, contaminated with salt. And all those agricultures, well, at some point in time, they will no longer have fresh water. They will have seawater. And yeah, you cannot produce agriculture with seawater. So this is a very bad news for Peru. And we were sort of watching this, what is happening. So we approached Peru and we said, well, probably we should cooperate here in order to have better regulations. I mean, you will be affected. Probably you are already affected. And we would like to know if this also will affect Chile and the populations that live there. Most of the population are indigenous populations. So, you see, we need to cooperate. Now, what is the problem? The problem is that we don't have a treaty about water resources with Peru. So here you see the benefits of having a treaty. Because at least it allows you to do some mutual research on what is happening. However, now that we have approached Peru, I have to say that we have found a very good reception to our concerns. So now we are going to establish conversations about this. The only problem that I have is that maybe we have came too late. Maybe this is a process that cannot go back. Okay, so this situation probably in many other parts of the world is happening. In Africa, in Europe. But in Europe, you have a treaty, a very interesting treaty, which is called the Espoo Convention. The Espoo Convention is about transboundary impact assessment. I think that in Europe, probably they were not thinking too much about water resources. Probably they were thinking more, the states, about industrial activities and also about nuclear energy. Because here in Europe and in France, you have nuclear reactors. Therefore, probably that was the question. You are going to install a nuclear reactor. If there is an accident, well, the whole Europe will be affected. Therefore, you have to conduct a transboundary impact assessment about these dangerous activities. But it also has application for water resources. I would love that in South America we could have a treaty like that, like the Espoo Convention. Okay, let's continue. What is the problem with Argentina? Here we have a treaty, but as I told you, it is an old treaty. So, unfortunately, it did not take into the text all the new developments in international water resources law. But this protocol has allowed, at least, exchange of information between the parties. That is valuable, very valuable. So, for example, when we have asked Argentina, they have answered and they say, well, you know, we know that in the press they said that there was this aqueduct project. However, we have not yet taken the decision. If we do take the decision, we will inform you. But the problem is that the protocol has relied on a particular tool envisaged to solve problems between the two states, which is, well, you, the parties, you have to establish and elaborate general plans of utilization regarding the shared water resources. And I think that the parties have been debating for 20 years what is a general plan of utilization. I mean, are we going to say what each party can do on the river? And I mean, the rivers, you don't find the rivers as new, pristine rivers. I mean, 1991, you already have people using the river. So are you going to tell the people that they have to change their usage of the waters? And we have had joint meetings for more than 20 years. And still they are discussing the terms of reference of the general plans of utilization, because I think that in the end, it was a tool that was not practicable. That, I mean, what are you going to do? Are you going to tell Argentina that only some people can use the water and not others? Also, what happens with national legislation? I mean, probably there is a right for the use of water. Probably there is a system of giving concessions of the water. I mean, your general plan of utilization probably cannot come and change all that. So it's very difficult. The tool, this is my conclusion, the tool envisaged by the parties to be able to cooperate with regard to water resources is proven to be not useful. So we should try to update our treaty. Okay, disputes now. Some of these international rivers have caused disputes. This means that at some point, no more conversations, or at least the accusation by one of the parties that the other party is breaching the law. So the first important dispute, this is it's historical dispute really, is about a river called the Lauca River, which I showed you already a picture. The Lauca is in the desert. So here we have the Lauca. You can see there also some volcanoes, interesting. So here you have Bolivia, here you have Chile. And the Lauca is here. There is a beautiful volcano here called Parinacota. And the Lauca runs across Chile, and then it enters into Bolivian territory. And Chile, in the 1950s, they were thinking about, well, how to have agriculture here, which is very dry. You see, all the wells of Peru are here, also very dry. So here we wanted to have agriculture. So the engineers built a canal, an artificial canal, and they were able to take water from here to the coast. And now we have some agriculture there, some agricultural activities. Well, Bolivia complained. They said, well, you are using my waters, because these waters get to Bolivia. You cannot do that without the authorization of Bolivia. So we have a right of veto. If we say no, you can't. And Chile said, well, but why not? Because this is a sure water resource, so maybe we could use it a little bit. And again, this river is fed off groundwater, as most of the rivers in the north. So they take water here, so only a little of water continues in the river. So they take some, I don't know, 600 liters per second. But as all this area, we have an aquifer, after some kilometers, again, the river becomes a big river because it is being fed by the aquifer. So in Bolivia, here, when it crossed the boundary, you have 2,000 or 2,500 liters per second crossing to Bolivia. So we say, well, we are taking 20% of the water. We also have the right to benefit there is no right of veto from the neighboring state. So we think that we are not breaching your rights. And there was a lot of communication during the 50s about the project, and we said, well, here you have all the files with the project. You can read the project. We could visit this. We would have joint visits. Please study, look. This will not deplete the river. Still, you will receive 80% of the water of the river, and we will keep the 20%. So this will not cause, at that time in the 50s, of course, we didn't have an environmental impact assessment because at that time, not yet we have all these environmental concerns. Okay, in the end, Bolivia never answered about their review of the project. And in 1962, Chile decided to go ahead and to divert the water. And that caused an international impasse. Bolivia broke international relations with Chile. So this was the cause for breaking the international relations, diplomatic relations. And Bolivia went to the OAS, the Organization of American States, and accused Chile of aggression, that this was sort of an environmental aggression. They even invoked the TR, which the Treaty of Inter-American Reciprocal Protection, so it's a security treaty. So we said, well, this is a controversy which should not have developed like this. I think that today, if we apply the rules of international law, we would say, well, is this an equitable and reasonable utilization? Is causing harm to Bolivia? Or should we try to reconcile? Applying the rules of international law, reconcile the two interests of the states. At that time, it was not possible to go to the International Court of Justice because neither party had accepted the jurisdiction of the International Court. This could have been brought to arbitration, but again, it required the will of the two states. So unfortunately, this is still a pending dispute between the two countries. And next, already Professor Boisson de Chazournes has tell you about the Silala River dispute. Again, a river that is in a very dry area, the Atacama Desert. Again, a river that is the source of the water is underground water, an aquifer. Again, a volcano, a beautiful volcano, the Inacaliri volcano. You can see even the lava over there, these black rocks, lava. And here, when the lava stopped, you have a small wetland, which means that millions of years ago, there was a lot of water probably here. And the lava covered these springs. So now we have springs only in that area. And those springs follow the gradient of the topography of the area. For many thousands of years, you have here a fluvial ravine going into Chilean territory. So this is the opposite of the Lauca. Here, the water source is in Bolivia, and it runs into Chilean territory. And what happened? Well, it happened that the dispute is about the denial by Bolivia of the international status of this river. So they said, this river has been artificially diverted by Chile. And you say, well, why they say that? Well, because in the Bolivian territory, there is a little, very small, channelization of the river made by a private company in the 19th century with the approval of Bolivia. And they said, well, we see that there are these small channels. We think that those channels were constructed in order to take the water to Chile. And Chile says, but no, this river exists there before human habitation. So it's very old, as you see. Therefore, that's not true. The dispute started in 1999. So the first time that Bolivia accused Chile of an artificial diversion was in 1999. And Chile said, well, but let's go and have a joint visit. Let's have joint studies about the river. I want to prove, Bolivia, that we have not diverted this river, that this river is there. This is natural water coming up through the springs. And, you know, here we have studied the topography. And the topography shows that here we have red, which means 5,000 meters above sea level. But here you can see we have all the curves showing the different altitudes. And you see, and here we have the river. So all the water, when you have rain, sporadic rains, it goes to the river. And then look, here it continues to go down. So all the water goes down. And normally water goes down. But Bolivia continued to complain about an alleged diversion. So here you have a satellite image. And when we were faced with this denial of the status of the Silala River as an international watercourse, and when Bolivia accepted already the jurisdiction of the International Court of Justice, we decided, well, now we have a great opportunity because we could go to the court to get legal certainty. We cannot have a dispute about the river that we know that is an international river. So this might help in the relationship with Bolivia. We will get legal certainty. So it will have a number of benefits if we go to the international court. So Chile decided to sue Bolivia before the international court. And it was a very interesting dispute, I might say, because it had a lot of science involved. Because the fact that was in question was the international status, and that is a fact. So you have to prove it. And Bolivia had to disprove it. So great. That's why Professor Boisson de Chazournes showed you a picture of the ICJ oral pleadings. And in that picture, you could see the scientists, the hydrologists, and they were cross-examined by the other party, and they were examined by the court. So that was a very interesting experience. Well, so with this experience, with what had happened, I have shown you what happens between Chile and its neighbors. You could replicate this in every part of the world today, given the fact also that water resources are each year scarcer. So scarcity will create a number of water disputes today. So what we could say to improve international water resources management? And first, there is an urgent need to invest on technical and scientific studies. States have to know the behavior of their water resources, rivers, lakes, aquifers. And the problem is that this is very, very expensive. When we were involved in the Silala case, I said, we already had studies, but the experts that we hired, they told us, well, you have to build more boreholes in order to know what is happening with the aquifer. Okay, I said, how much would that be? And I was surprised to see that it's thousands of dollars, one borehole. And we had to do like, I don't know, 10 boreholes. Then the need to negotiate agreements that allow the parties to cooperate. But those are not any agreement. The agreements have to make the principles workable, that you could take that to the real life, diplomatic life of the states. So if you say, for example, you have to make a general plan of utilization of all your watercourses, that is undoable. So you have to be realistic. Then you have to have clear rules, clear principles, and you have to have someone in charge. You cannot to sort of dilute the responsibility on 20 different agencies. You need to have someone, one agency, one body, a state agency that will be in charge of having the communications with the other state. And that sometimes states have difficulty with coordination. It's very difficult to have coordination in our states. Well, probably France, that has a very good administrative law. Probably France could be an example, I don't know. Maybe you also have problems of coordination. But it is not an easy task to coordinate different state agencies. And I was head of the boundary department, so I know how difficult it is to coordinate different agencies. So, for example, I said, well, you know, you are going to build a road, you have to take care of, and they said, no, this is the responsibility of the Public Works Ministry, not of the Department of Boundaries. You see, very difficult. And, well, those were my conclusions. So, thank you very much. And Laurence, we will have questions? Okay, thank you very much.